Tessa Thorne, a renowned novelist known for her thrilling and mysterious works, is on the phone with a friend. Today she has a fan meet and greet at the library, an important event that requires her to prepare quickly. After double-checking her schedule, Tessa hurriedly gets into her car, enters the library's address into the GPS, and sets off. The road to the library is long and winding, but she remains focused on driving, ready for the event ahead. Finally, Tessa arrived. Her heart pounded with excitement as she parked and stepped out of the car. Greeting her with a warm, radiant smile was Ramona, the welcoming and hospitable owner of the library. Ramona approached her, embodying the spirit of community connection on this special occasion. She had personally invited Tess to share her journey and insights with the eager audience waiting inside. Taking a deep breath, Tess felt a mix of excitement and deep gratitude fill her heart. As Tessa stepped through the library doors, the atmosphere instantly grew lively. Familiar faces among her readers lit up as they recognized her arrival. Standing before them, ready for her speech, Tessa felt surrounded by warmth, support, and admiration. They were more than just fans. They were individuals whose lives had been touched by the stories she told. Their love for her books was not only a source of encouragement, but also a flame that fueled her passion, making her creative journey all the more meaningful. In that moment, Tessa knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, sharing her thoughts with those who truly appreciated them. As the event came to a close and she prepared to leave, Ramona approached with a warm smile and suggested a shortcut that would help Tessa get home faster. Grateful for the tip, which could save her nearly an hour of travel time, Tessa felt a wave of relief wash over her. She settled into her car, eager to begin the journey ahead, and entered the route Ramona had suggested into her GPS. As Tessa drove, excitement bubbled inside her, certain that she would soon be home after a long and exhausting day. But suddenly a stray piece of wood flew up and lodged itself under her tire, forcing her to slam on the brakes. Stepping out to inspect the damage, her heart sank. The tire was flat. She glanced around and realized she was stranded at a run-down gas station, seemingly abandoned for years. Not a single soul in sight, no signs of life, only the desolate road stretching endlessly ahead, making her keenly aware of the isolation and danger surrounding her. Tessa faced a daunting challenge, changing the flat tire on her own, fully aware that finding another vehicle on this desolate highway was nearly impossible. She stood by the roadside, hoping for a glimmer of luck. When she spotted a bus approaching, she quickly raised her hand, signaling for it to stop. However, the bus sped past without even slowing down, leaving her alone in disappointment. Moments later, another car appeared in the distance. Taking a deep breath, she signaled once more. This time, luck was on her side. The car slowed down and came to a complete stop right in front of her. Tessa hurried over to the driver, asking for his help. He gladly agreed and introduced himself as Lester. As he began changing her tire, Tessa felt relieved, thinking she'd soon be on her way home. But then, a creeping sense of fear took hold of her. Her eyes drifted to the back of Lester's truck, and her heart clenched. Inside were wooden planks with nails sticking out, identical to the one that had punctured her tire. And then a horrifying realization set in. Lester was watching her, but his gaze was no longer friendly. It was the gaze of a predator. As Lester continued working on the tire, his demeanor gradually shifted. The initial friendliness faded, replaced by a suspicious darkness. It became clear that he had realized she was completely alone, and his intentions were far from innocent. Before Tessa could process the unease creeping through her, Lester suddenly lunged at her, landing a brutal punch to her face, knocking her unconscious. When she opened her eyes, she found herself crammed into his vehicle. The car was speeding down an empty road, and then, true horror struck, Lester was attacking her in the most brutal way imaginable. Tessa screamed for help, begging him to stop, but Lester's cruelty seemed to have no limits. He continued to torment her mercilessly. The physical pain mixed with overwhelming despair, dragging her consciousness into darkness. When her body could no longer resist, Lester lifted her onto his shoulder without a shred of emotion. He carried her deep into the eerie forest, a place where no one could hear her cries for help. With chilling indifference, he tossed her to the ground. Tessa lay there, lifeless, empty, like an abandoned doll. Lester dragged Tessa's limp body through the decaying leaves, taking her to an even more desolate and isolated place. He discarded her like a worthless object before disappearing into the darkness. After a while, Tessa slowly regained consciousness. She struggled to stand, but her legs were too weak to support her, causing her to collapse onto the cold ground. As she turned her head to the side, a horrifying sight unfolded before her. Lifeless bodies scattered around, their empty eyes staring into nothingness. They were the lives Lester had stolen. They had once been victims just like her, but unlike Tessa, they never had the chance to survive. A different fire ignited within her. She refused to become one of them. She had to escape. Summoning every last ounce of strength, she slowly pushed herself to her feet. Her legs trembled beneath her, but she did not falter. Every unsteady step was more than just an attempt to flee. It was proof of her unyielding will to survive. She pressed forward, fully aware of the danger lurking in the shadows. Each step was a battle, but she knew one thing for certain. If she stopped now, she would never escape this nightmare. When she spotted a car approaching from behind, Tessa instinctively spun around, her heart pounding. Panic surged through her veins and her survival instincts took over. She frantically searched for a place to hide, pressing herself into the shadows, desperate to remain unseen. The trust she once had in passing vehicles had been shattered, obliterated by the horrors she had just endured. She no longer dared to take the risk of calling for help. After a long, grueling journey, exhaustion weighing heavily on her body, Tessa finally stumbled upon a small store. As she staggered inside, a faint sense of safety washed over her for the first time since the nightmare began. She hurriedly grabbed her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed her friend's number, desperate to hear a familiar voice, some form of comfort. But no one answered. Disheartened by the silence, yet determined to make it home, Tessa pressed on. Every step felt heavier than the last, but she refused to collapse. The moment she stepped through her front door, she rushed straight to her locker, her shaky hands fumbling as she retrieved her gun. Carefully loading the ammunition, she checked each bullet one by one, fully aware that this was her only chance to protect herself. Lester had her bag. He had her address. He knew exactly where she lived. The nightmare wasn't over. Her body was exhausted, her wounds burned. But Tessa didn't dare go to the hospital. She couldn't risk leaving the house, couldn't bear to face anyone. She feared that even a moment of carelessness would give Lester the chance to return and finish what he had started. Instead of seeking help, Tessa withdrew into the safest corner of her home, the only place where she still felt some sense of control. Time passed. The wounds on her body slowly healed, but the scars on her soul did not. And from those scars a new fire ignited, a relentless thirst for revenge. She couldn't let Lester roam free. She couldn't allow him to destroy anyone else's life. Tessa made a vow to herself. She would face him, and this time she would be the one in control. As she planned her next move, her phone suddenly rang. On the other end, a voice informed her that her car was ready for pickup, but she needed to get there before the police got involved. Wasting no time, Tessa rushed to the impound lot. As she arrived, she happened to cross paths with an older woman. The woman's eyes lingered on Tessa's wounds, and with quiet concern, she asked what had happened to her. As if she had been holding it in for too long, Tessa slowly recounted everything, the painful memories of her brutal encounter with Lester. The woman then shared her own past. She had once been a victim of horrific abuse and torture at the hands of her stepfather, a monster in human form. He had tormented her so severely that he left her permanently disabled, even gouging out her eyes, condemning her to a lifetime of darkness. Her story cut deep into Tessa's soul, like a blade slicing through old wounds. She realized that in this world, some scars never heal. The woman's voice was low and sorrowful, carrying the weight of unimaginable pain. She warned Tessa about the cruelty of the heartless, reminding her to always stay vigilant and strong in a world that so often turns a blind eye to women's suffering. Finally, Tessa got into her car and drove home, her heart still heavy. When she arrived, she turned on her computer and stumbled upon something suspicious. Ramona had taken photos of her at the library and had specifically reminded her to take the shortcut home. Confusion quickly turned into suspicion. Why had Ramona been so insistent on her taking that route? A chill ran down Tessa's spine as the horrifying truth became clear. Ramona had set her up. She had deliberately guided Tessa down that shortcut, giving Lester the perfect opportunity to capture and attack her in the most brutal way. The bitter truth slowly unraveled. Lester was Ramona's son. Not only had she set Tessa up, but she had also actively sent Lester photos of her via email. paving the way for the brutal attack. Gripping the gun tightly, Tessa stormed toward Ramona's house, her mind consumed by a single objective: revenge. As the door swung open, Ramona froze, her eyes widening in sheer terror at the sight before her. Tessa was alive, and she was standing there, gun aimed straight at her. Ramona collapsed to her knees, trembling as she begged for mercy. Her voice was broken, her face streaked with tears, and she desperately insisted on her innocence. But under Tessa's cold, unyielding gaze, her pleas were meaningless. Tessa's heart had turned to ice. There was no sympathy left in her for Ramona's desperate cries. As she prepared to pull the trigger, Ramona seized the moment, lunging forward to wrestle the gun from her grasp. The two women struggled violently, each fighting for control. But in the end, Tessa's sheer will to survive prevailed. She reclaimed the gun, and without hesitation she pulled the trigger. Ramona collapsed, her life ending in the same cruel fate she had orchestrated for Tessa. Tessa wiped the streak of blood from her face, her hands trembling as her gaze fell on a photograph of Lester and his younger brother. Suddenly something caught her eye. Lester. His hand was wrapped in a bandage, his face tense as he drove away. Clutching the gun tightly, Tessa immediately took off after him, following him to a desolate area. When she arrived, she sprang out of the car, her eyes sweeping the surroundings, searching for Lester, but he was nowhere to be seen. She scoured the area in vain, until she spotted a truck approaching from the distance. Her instincts flared. Quickly she ducked into hiding, certain that Lester was the one behind the wheel. The truck came to a stop. Tessa stepped out from the shadows, her finger tightening around the trigger. Then, without giving him a chance to fight back, she fired a bullet tearing straight through his head. But as the figure slumped lifelessly from the truck, Tessa's heart clenched. It wasn't Lester. The man lying motionless before her was Lester's brother, the same one from the photograph she had once held in her hands. Tessa collapsed beside the body, tears streaming down her pale face. Tessa stepped into the empty house, the beam of her flashlight trembling as she moved deeper into the room. But the moment the light swept across the walls, her heart nearly stopped. Before her was a horrifying collection of photographs, images capturing Lester and his brother assaulting young women, then mercilessly killing them to cover their tracks. A chilling realization hit her: these monsters weren't acting alone. Their mother had been involved too, luring victims, orchestrating kidnappings, and taking part in the brutal torment and murder of countless innocent lives. The horror intensified as memories came flooding back during Lester's attack. There had been a sudden flash. Only now did she understand, it was his brother. He had been taking pictures of that nightmare. Carefully, Tessa crept deeper into the abandoned house, each step as silent as a predator stalking its prey. And then, right in front of her, Lester. He was busy with something, completely unaware that he was being watched. Tessa tightened her grip on the gun. She could end him right now from a distance. But no, she wanted him to see her. She wanted him to feel the fear he had once inflicted on his victims. Lester turned around, his eyes widening in shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Tessa, the woman he thought was dead at his hands, now stood before him, gun aimed straight at him, ready to deliver justice on her own terms. With a furious snarl, Lester lunged at her, intent on finishing what he started. Tessa pulled the trigger. The bullet struck him, but the monster refused to go down. Too wounded yet relentless, he staggered forward, eyes burning with murderous rage. Thinking fast, Tessa grabbed a rusted, nail-ridden wooden plank nearby and swung it with all her strength. The sharp nails sank deep into Lester's face. He let out a guttural scream of agony, blood streaming down his face, yet he still tried to crawl toward the car, desperate to escape. But his body was failing him. He was too wounded, too weak. His trembling hands clawed at the door handle, but he couldn't pull himself up. In his final moments, as his vision blurred and his breath grew ragged, he understood this was the end. There would be no escape. Tessa stepped forward, gun raised. She took aim at Lester's last remaining weakness and pulled the trigger. It was over. Her revenge was complete. And now, at last, she could move forward, free from the nightmare that had haunted her for so long.